call this story Hungarian Goulash. When the acclaimed author Philip Roth, who died week before last, published his satiric novel Portnoy's Complaint, it had a profound impact on me. Reading the book wasn't really a life-changing experience so much as a life-affirming one. I could see myself on practically every page. And nothing resonated for me more than Roth's send-up of life at the Jewish American dining table. When his protagonist, Alexander Portnoy, visited a girlfriend in the Midwest, he was amazed. People came down to breakfast and actually said good morning to each other. And at dinner time, there were conversations. It reminded Portnoy of the American family he'd heard on the radio, on the adventures of Henry Aldrich, and me, depicted in sitcoms like Father Knows Best and Ozzie and Harriet. But it had very little to do with life at our dining table. You see, at our house, mealtime was all about the food. Before my parents married, my mother spent a week at her future mother-in-law's house, learning how to prepare the hearty European dishes my father had been raised on. By the time I came along, and then my sister, she was starting to branch out a little bit, modernizing. She would comb the pages of magazines like Red Book, McCall's, and Good Housekeeping, looking for stories, for recipes that would enable her to transform a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup into tuna casserole and crumble up Kellogg's cornflakes to coat oven-baked chicken. But we still loved the old standbys best, and nothing more than what she called Hungarian goulash. Chunks of beef in a thick and savory gravy with carrots and lima beans and green beans. She'd cook it in a pressure cooker with one of those jiggly tops to save time. One time she got the pressure wrong and the lid blew off, leaving shards of meat and vegetables on the kitchen ceiling. That became a family heirloom story. But it was the only time that happened. Every other time, she got it just right. One other thing happened. Every time my mother served Hungarian goulash, my father would say, "Budgie," that was his pet name for her, "can I have the ketchup, please?" And this would send my sister and I into something close to a rage. Long before anyone heard of the term women's liberation, we were very protective of our mother. We wanted her to get the respect to which she was entitled. And it just drove us wild that this dish that she had prepared so assiduously would be adulterated with ketchup. And we let him know it too. My sister would say, "Daddy, what an insult that is. Mommy worked so hard on this dish and you're gonna plonk ketchup onto it?" She wouldn't say a word. She would sit there stoically, and sooner or later, hand over the Heinz. If this happened once, it happened a dozen times. Every time Hungarian goulash was on the menu. Well, time passed. I left the house. My sister left the house. My parents retired to Florida. Years passed, and one day I got a hankering for Hungarian goulash. I called down to Florida and got the recipe from my mother. She explained how to take the meat and braise it and add the vegetables and put in the bouillon and the paprika and the other seasoning and bring it to a boil and simmer it. And it tasted good to me just hearing the recipe, and I thanked her. And she said, "Well, wait a minute, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you." And I said, "What, Mom?" She said, "Well, you want to thicken that gravy." And I said, "Well, how do I do that?" Well, she said, "The way I always did it was about 10 minutes before you serve the dish, pour in half a bottle of ketchup." After we hung up the phone, I stared at it for a while, thinking to myself, I know a lot more about my mother than I ever have before.